The most successful marketers are focused on audience needs first, not brand messaging.
Get your product and content marketing teams together. If you have the right leader today, or if you need to find a leader that can lead both teams, do it, because it's going to create efficiency and just better outputs.
AI is not a panacea for success. It's really got to be a combination of streamlining that pipeline, but also ensuring that you're doing the level of quality control that's going to help you stand out, not get dinged by the algorithm, and combine the best of both worlds, really.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Kilens.
Let's see what's trending.
What's up? Welcome to another episode of GTM News Desk. My name is Mark Kilens. I am with Nick Bennett. Nick, how are you?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. Recording this on a Friday. It's sunny. It's not too bad out.
It's Red Sox home opening day. It's last time I checked, they were up 5-0 in the first inning. So
I could care less about baseball. You know about that about me. It's the least favorite sport. Your favorite sport? My least favorite sport.
100%.
That's good. You bet on the Red Sox? You have a lot of money on that team?
No. I just really enjoy watching them. It was a rough couple of games to start the season, but last 3 or 4 games they've turned it around.
All I know is the Red Sox probably need those new bats.
The torpedo bats.
Yeah. Sounds like you should buy one of those too for your game, because I know you're going to play again this year.
Yep.
Anywho, content marketing. Lot to unpack. We got a fantastic guest in segment 3, John from Vena. He's going to unpack a ton of stuff when it comes to content marketing, product marketing, brand, because that is how his team is set up. He's 5 different marketing functions underneath him, and it's really insightful. It's similar to how I had my team set up at Drift a couple years ago. You definitely want to tune in for that once we get to that segment. But to kick it off, we have 2 interesting studies. I'll start with the Wistia study that just came out in March 2025. They got this amazing study all about, guess what? If you know Wistia, video marketing, which this podcast is video marketing, if you will. It's like 41 pages. It's insane the amount of data they have in this report. All I can say is video production is becoming much more important. So they talk about creating more videos, the video types, interactive features, AI in video, webinars, which is, yes, a type of video. Here's an interesting thing. Over half of marketers, Nick, spend more time creating videos than promoting them.
Huh. That's interesting.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
No, that's a terrible thing, because I mean, we could create 1 million videos, and if you're not going to promote them, who's going to see them?
Yeah. So if you look at this, right, like they've broken this down by video type and location. So I can't go through all this data, but the best play rate for a video is on a course type page, which kind of makes sense. You're taking a course, high play rate. Video gallery. So if you don't use video galleries, similar to what we have in TAC Insider, we have a couple different examples of a video gallery. That's the second highest play rate, 33%. Followed by, which is super interesting, I couldn't believe this one, a contact us page. Contact us page.
Interesting.
Get this though, and this is where it's like, I got to really look at these stats a bit more. Blog and case study are the bottom 2. 11% for blog and 8% for case study, which is like, I don't even understand. Maybe they're positioning the video wrong on those pages or something, but like I would thought that is way higher. Yeah, so some very, very interesting things in this study. Let's see, it was one more thing. Well, we've talked about video and search. That's becoming extremely important. They unpack that in the study. And they do find that adding interactive features to your videos, which very few people do, which I don't know, they should do more. We should do this more. We don't do this enough, by the way, which is a problem. You can increase the conversion rate dramatically, and videos that are longer have higher conversion rates. Look at this stat. 30 to 60 minute videos have a 17% conversion rate versus a video that's under a minute or 1 to 3 minutes has a 2% conversion rate, which kind of makes sense because a 1 to 3 minute video, you're kind of just trying to get something and get out of there. But 3 to 5 is 5%. 5 to 30 is 10%. So like, it's almost like make a 6-minute video instead of a 4-minute video, and you might see your conversion rate double. It's like, I don't know. That's very interesting stuff.
That's crazy. I'm surprised by that stat, because I always thought that like shorts did and performed better than longer form content, but that blows me away.
Well, it goes into what John will probably talk about, because we have a question about this, which is like content measurement and content performance. And my instinct is like the channel matters a lot in terms of how you think about what type of content, the length of that content, how that content is designed. The channel, how you distribute it is really important these days.
Yeah.
When it comes to creating.
100%.
So anyway, download the whole thing. We'll have it in the show notes. Ton of great stuff. The design of the report is beautiful as well. So kudos to Wistia. Shout out to you. Love it. Segment number 2, Nick. What do we got?
So I have a report from Content Marketing Institute, which is their 2025 B2B Content Marketing Trends Report. It ties in fantastically to the conversation in the third segment we're going to have with John, but there's a couple interesting stats that I wanted to call out. So they surveyed, I forget the number of marketers, but I think it was like a couple thousand. So out of a couple thousand B2B marketers, only 28% rated their content strategy as very or extremely effective. So in my mind,
shit.
yeah, right. That's a
980. It looks like 980 people.
980. Okay. But still 28%, that's not even I guess a little over a quarter. So, I mean, does that mean most teams are just going through the motions? I don't know. So I thought that stat was interesting. I think, and it talks about what high performers do differently, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it kind of ties into the whole people first mindset. But it says the most successful marketers are focused on audience needs first, not brand messaging, which makes perfect sense. They're building content that solves real problems, and then they're layering their specific POV. And it's not the other way around, which I feel like so much content today is the other way around. So thought that was very interesting. I know we have a question that we're going to be asking John about this, but around team structure, but it said 76% of organizations now have a dedicated content team or person. And it says most teams are lean, 2 to 5 people max, which was very interesting. Again, it's under 1,000 people, but still almost 3/4 of them have a dedicated content person, which is definitely interesting. So I think, obviously went into the whole AI piece too. Gen AI is here, all of that stuff. So obviously it says, hey, don't use AI to, create from scratch, but use AI to optimize. One thing that it talked about, which I thought was interesting because I've heard you mention this as well, is building a content operating system. And so set themes, repurpose across channels, and measure what actually drives action. And make sure your team's role is revenue adjacent, which I thought was very interesting in that whole report too. So a lot of other stats in there, but fantastic read for anyone that's in content or, thinking about getting in content marketing. Some really, really good stuff from the Content Marketing Institute.
Content marketers, you better be measuring revenue, I honestly don't know how you will keep your job long term with AI now.
Yeah.
You have people that don't understand marketing saying, well, a content marketer, we could just ask an AI agent to do that or
Exactly.
ask an AI co-pilot or assistant to do that, which, yeah, it's crazy. We'll do more segments and shows about that coming up. But yeah, folks in content need to get really good at storytelling, need to become more of a product marketer, need to really understand business context, need to understand how their creations are impacting revenue and profitability. Lots to unpack with that. But yeah, 2 really good reports. Check them out. They're in the show notes. We're going to go to segment 3 with John now. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to segment number 3 in today's show. So excited to be talking to John. John and I have known each other for a few years now, at least, and we've been playing ping pong, trying to get this recorded as one, as 2 people, in this case, 3 people do with podcast recordings. So John, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. I'm going to have you do a quick intro in a moment, but the reason why Nick and I are so excited to speak with you is you have this such interesting setup. I'm just going to say the setup of how you think about content, product marketing, brand, and how it's actually set up from a team structure standpoint and execution standpoint. We'll get into as we go through the questions. We're going to save some of that for the exclusive content that you can find on Tech Insider. John will be sharing some very interesting ways to think about your team structure, how to produce content, and the intersection between brand, product marketing, and content marketing. So John, welcome. Do a quick intro for everyone. let us know a little bit about yourself and then we can get into it.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jonathan Paul. I am the VP of Content Marketing at Vena Solutions. We're a SaaS company based in Toronto. We operate in the corporate performance management space. And so what that means is we operate a platform for finance professionals, predominantly financial planning and analysis professionals. And that platform helps them streamline key, finance-led processes like budgeting, forecasting, planning, and even adjacent relevant strategic processes like sales and marketing planning and more. And really sort of the promise that we offer is this idea of being able to take FP&A and lock its power across the business, freeing up financial planning and analysis professionals to kind of stop doing a lot of the manual things that take up a lot of their time and empower them to focus more on being strategic business partners by empowering other folks across the organization to effectively leverage expertise capabilities that they would otherwise get from their interactions with FP&A professionals in the flow of work. So it's a pretty exciting time. I think what a lot of the things we talk about is how we empower our customers to basically plan better and achieve more. And that comes with being able to make agile decisions, and FP&A professionals obviously play a big part in that. So, when the market's changing so quickly, when things are so dynamic, it becomes even more important for that to happen. And so we believe that we have a strong value message to bring to the market.
No, I love it. I mean, Nick loves finance just as much as me. He knows that. And I'll have him ask the first question. We'll have fun with this. You're selling and marketing to a tough audience, in my opinion. And we'll get into that as part of some of the questions maybe. But Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Tough audience for sure. And it goes with the first question, because what I wanted to ask you is, how do you make remarkable content today that ties into your audience? I'm so curious because I haven't been in that space before. So
yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. First and foremost, I think when you're approaching content creation, obviously you want to have a clear objective in mind for what the content is and what it's going to do, whether that's SEO, whether that's thought leadership, or whatever the case might be. But I think most important is knowing your audience and sort of taking an audience first mindset. In our space in particular, there's a high level of domain expertise. And, if you're going to come out and be credible, if you're going to be relevant, you really have to understand the ins and outs of ultimately what they're doing every day, what matters to them. I mean, that's, I think, standard practice for anyone who's creating content. But in particular, for our space where it's, fairly specialized, making sure that you're approaching things from that mindset's critically important. And then on top of that, making sure that what you're producing is ultimately valuable, right? Value to me is the most important thing, that you need to be getting something out of it, something that educates them, something they can take away, whether it's a unique perspective, a unique insight, a hot take, an action plan, and, like an aha moment, or something functional like a tool or a template. Obviously making it memorable is important, originality, good storytelling. And then of course, depending on where you're executing, making sure it's channel appropriate. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to necessarily take a blog and just repost on LinkedIn. You might find a really novel way of taking that blog and making it into really memorable social content that drives back to that original article, but just ensuring that you're keeping in tune with consumption habits on the channel, people's preferences, and sort of meeting them where they are is very, very important. And, all of which I think is super important in a world where I think it's fair to say we're in content overload. There is so much of it. How do you stand out? Keeping in mind your audience, what matters to them, making it relevant, making it memorable, really focusing on that value component, I think are key ways to help you ensure that it stands out and resonate.
Before we ask the next question, I just want to have you go a little bit deeper in some specifics on how does your team make the content memorable? Because you said that, and I love that. I agree. Memorable, we always talked about at HubSpot. It's a little bit different now, but remarkable. You got to make something remarkable. And then how do you make it valuable? Like what are some specifics your team does to help make sure those things are part of what the consumer of that content experiences and feels?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Again, I think being cognizant of the channel, firstly, so that you know that you're meeting expectations on delivery. Importantly, being in dialogue with your customer to understand what's important to them, what matters to them at any given moment, to ensure that you're able to deliver that value. And again, just sort of rolling with it. Their priorities can change depending on, what's happening out there in the ether and in the market. So just making sure that you're constantly having those conversations, having a really decisive point of view Again, the objective is super important, right? And I think in terms of your decisive point of view, underpinning that is what, your unique worldview as a business, and ultimately the unique value that you think you can bring to it, which, may harken to what we're going to talk a little bit later about team structure. But ultimately, you have an ethos as a company, and you have a unique value proposition as it relates to your product that's probably based on that ethos. How does that underpin the content that you're creating to inform the value that you're offering and whatever it might be, whether, again, that's that thought leadership or how you're orchestrating SEO content to capture, like high volume keywords. That's always going to be tracking back to what people are searching for and how that matches up with, that product value, that ethos, or whatever it is that you want to lean into to stand out in the market.
That's why you and I get along so well. Nick, well, no, because like not many people say ethos, and Nick knows I use that term. He makes fun of me probably for it.
It's a good word.
It's funny because I actually don't hear many people use it. When you said it, I was like, oh, it sounds like I'm talking to Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's a word we use quite a bit, at Vena, and it sort of goes back to how our company was founded. I'll save you guys the history lesson on who we are and where we came from, but we do believe we have a unique worldview in terms of how we offer value to our audience through the product that we provide. And so again, use it as an underpinning rather, and that content creation is critically important.
Yeah, let's get into the team structure then.
Yeah.
Like Nick and I are fascinated by how you have your team set up. So just unpack it for us, please.
Yeah, sure. So, again, my title's content marketing, but the team comprises much more than that. So it, under my portfolio, includes product marketing, as well as content marketing, brands, external communications, and then programming as well. And programming is essentially our video team. And we use that word programming very deliberately. I think they do more than just produce video assets, but they also look at video execution from a programming lens. How are we creating, really interesting video experiences that go beyond just a product video or a piece of video collateral? And one of the examples is the podcast that we run. So we did that deliberately. But yeah, those are all the functions that effectively fall under the portfolio.
It's so much like how we had it set up at Drift for a little bit. First off, you need a new title.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. We're still working through that.
Fair enough. Let me help advocate, with you on that one. But tell us the evolution first. Like, tell us the evolution of like how it got to that structure.
That's an interesting question. I guess it was a long gestating evolution. It just sort of happened. But I think largely, again, I sort of came up in the company through content, and over time, it just sort of happened that I started leaning in more to the creation of positioning and that work. And ultimately, this, the structure just came to be sort of through that lens, I think, but also based on a realization that if you're going to be going to market and creating content and trying to add value through that work, there needs to be a very, very strong connection between, the product marketing component where you're doing the value messaging, you're coming up with the positioning, you have that customer sort of insight, and you also have that comp intel that feeds into effectively how you're making choices in the content that you're creating, how you're manufacturing your messaging, and then how you're ultimately executing it and creating a pretty seamless funnel that's based in consistency. And I think that's largely how it sort of happened, right? So now we've got alignment across these groups that ultimately play a very important part in how our company and how our product is understood in the market, how we occupy that mind share, right? And that's, occupying mind share is a game that you're playing across all of your content, across all of the funnel. And again, starting from like audience insights and comp intel, understanding how we're different, what resonates with our audience and what we know they believe in, what's important to them, all the way through to how we then manufacture our positioning, bringing in that ethos, right? The very distinct value props you have, and how that then informs the messaging you create as that sort of layer that's, here's how we're going to come out with really impactful copy and all of that sort of stuff. And then, how that's then brought to life into execution ultimately through whatever channels. So again, it's like a nice kind of synchronized funnel, consistent messaging. And then just operationally, I think across those teams who should be working effectively together anyway, it eliminates a level of fragmentation. When we're all meeting at the same time, aligning on what the key priorities are, having those conversations as a group, everyone knows what everyone's doing, gets the context, which is also important. So you can move together faster, more effectively, more collaboratively, more strategically when you're going to market, with those direct connections, which are super important. Again, just like one team taking full ownership of that, positioning through to output.
Yeah. I mean, it's storytelling, right? Content and product marketing and brand storytelling, having all the teams that do the storytelling together. Why not? Like, so if anyone's listening, that's a marketing leader. So kudos to your CMO Ellison for, keeping that structure going and allowing you guys to really thrive. Like, get your product and content marketing teams together. And if you have the right leader today, or if you need to find a leader that can like lead both teams, do it, because it's going to create efficiency and just better outputs and outcomes for the business.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and the lines in the sand are they're kind of blurred at times too in terms of content creation and ultimately what you're doing. And storytelling, to your point, super important when we coming back to that first question about, again, what makes remarkable content. Storytelling is so super critical, not just from a product standpoint, but from a thought leadership standpoint. And there's got to be, in my opinion, that sort of underlying consistent thread that ties it all together.
Love that. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about some misconceptions that happen out there. And so everything that you've experienced, what would you say is the most common misconception about content marketing and event marketing success from executives currently?
Yeah, I found that question really interesting. Event marketing, content marketing is maybe where I'll focus. And I don't want to speak for all executives and certainly not mine, but I think in this day and age, and maybe very, very currently, there's this potentially a misconception around the idea that volume is sort of the key for success, or quantity is the key to success, especially in a world where we now have AI tools to help us, increase pipeline as it relates to content creation. And again, coming back to the first question, I don't believe that's true. I think it is quality. Just because you have an AI tool doesn't mean you should go out and pump 5,000 drafts of articles, and that's going to lead you to, the promised land. You still have to take the time to make sure that the content is of a quality. And in fact, we know that, again, in the context of SEO as an example, you can pump out all the AI generated SEO content you want. You're still probably going to get dinged by the algorithm anyway. So I think quality still is very much got to be a priority. Also, you can't just create content and expect that, it's going to drive results. There's the distribution component to take into account, like thought leadership, for example, is only as good as the ability to distribute it. Now, I don't know if that's a misconception amongst executives or just kind of like a common sense fact, but I think, just on that volume piece, I think that's an important one for everyone to know. AI is not a panacea for success. It's really got to be a combination of streamlining that pipeline, but also ensuring that you're doing the level of quality control that's going to help you stand out, not get dinged by the algorithm, and combine the best of both worlds, really.
Events, a lot of times, Nick knows this, it's content. Right, the events content. I feel like, and love to know, just a quick aside, it doesn't sound like you were on the events team, correct, John?
Not something I lead, but I obviously play a big part in it from a content standpoint. So the agenda is something that generally will fall under my remit.
So what's the take for your audience? Because like marketing audiences, like if you're doing a lot of speaking at the audience now with events, for a marketing audience, doesn't really land too well. Like it's got to be high bar caliber speakers, or something that's very thorough in teaching you, and you really can't find that like in a YouTube video or a video on a website. Like what is your audience? Like how do you think about like the content at events, before we get to the last question on people first content, which actually ties in, right? But like I think that's why we asked the question, like misconception, because like we have a strong opinion that like event content a lot of times sucks and it's just stupid because you can find it online.
Yeah, well, maybe I could frame it this way. I guess the misconception could be that event content needs to be someone on a stage talking at you for 30 minutes or an hour. And I believe, it's more than that. You got to, again, engage and get value out of it. So in our context, and I mean, that's not to say that we don't have keynotes or anything like that. Of course you do. But we also try to make it as engaging as possible with fireside chats. But more importantly, we also facilitate what we call learning labs. So we give our audience the opportunity to come in and actually get functional experience doing something. And for our audience, again, FP&A professionals, that might be using tools like Excel, like the latest and greatest in Excel for FP&A use cases, which is part of our value proposition as a company, who has an interface that, is natively integrated with Microsoft Excel. So that's valuable to our audience. And we know, of course, that, I don't know if you guys have seen the memes, and it's like there's Atlas holding up the world, and Excel is Atlas, right? So, we create those opportunities, and more than that, we give them the ability to further their professional development and professional accreditation, right? With what's called CPE credits. So it's more than just, from our standpoint, the talking head, still valuable, right? You still want to provide perspectives, but actually giving them an opportunity to propel their, personal and professional growth, I think, is something that's super valuable at an event. And perhaps the misconception again is that, there's this stale sort of format for just having these on-stage experiences. It doesn't need to be that. And I think you could also make the argument that, coming out of 5 years or so where there was a lot of virtual only, and then we're just, over the past year or two getting back to in person, there's a lot of desire just to like interact and interface with your peers. You know what I mean? Whether that's a round table or an experience. I think experiences are a super important part of events now. That's something that we're looking to double down on with our upcoming event in May. So I think, you can get really creative and diverse in terms of how you orchestrate an agenda that's complemented by other things that provide value insofar as your attendance.
Well, John, that was very insightful. And thank you for taking the time to answer some of these questions with us today. But I know we have a few more for you to answer during the exclusive content. So you'll stick around for that. And everyone listening, head on over to TAC Insider. You can find that exclusive content. John, thank you for the time.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk presented by TAC Insider. To dive into the exclusive content with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to TAC Insider. Until next time, I'm Mark Kilens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.